Hello to the chess chicos and the chess chicas. What a beautiful alliteration there to start our next video. The next video in which we are going to examine a game that brought me immense joy and the same amount of grief. And that is a very rare occurrence. The sad part of it really is the fact that probably my student who played this game felt a lot more grief and far less pleasure out of this game. So now we are going to talk in this video about how to win the one game, which, by the way, quite fittingly is a title of a chess book, which another student of mine gave me, and I have read parts of it. Quite interesting. So yeah, I just thought that I would chuck that in as an additional tidbit. So let's go through this game, because hopefully I'm going to be able to share with you some ideas and concepts that you might find useful in your own playing life. The reason why this game is an absolute heartbreak for me is the fact that until move 30 or even beyond, it was such a brilliantly well played game by White that I couldn't wait to put it into my student's Rock, which is a video I'm going to release soon too, by the way, with different game. And then I looked up and I'm like, oh, we lost this, no. And then I realized that actually there is a beautiful educational element to this game. But let's first examine how we are absolutely smashing it. So bishop g4, a common mistake. I've spoken about this in at least one video, that against the d3 Ruy Lopez, bishop g4 makes no sense. You just get pushed around, you go back there, you're going to walk into another tempo. It's just a nightmare really for black to play like this. By the way, players 2105 and 2143, I decided not to display it because I would like to keep my students anonymous for this particular game. Which is not going to be easy if I want to put the link to the game in the description. I will figure out something. So, h3, opponent realizes that this is not going well. So decides to take, which of course instantly hands the two bishops to White. Queen on f3 is in a great position. Knight f1, knight g3, knight f5 is incoming. The whole shebang just looks perfect. D. Another thing that black shouldn't have done. Bishop c5. Typical move that I call pseudo-active. Bishop has no job here whatsoever, but now it's going to allow bishop g5 coming with a tempo on the knight. And the fact that the knight is now not guarded by the bishop means that motifs like knight in takes, followed by bishop h6 check, and all those kind of tactical shenanigans around the black king will be far, far more effective. Matter of fact, here the computer promotes the idea or prefers the idea of bishop e7, so that's a testament to how bad this bishop move is, despite of the fact that it looks like it's aggressive, it's developing, it's controlling center, blah, all the things that I talk about all the time. Textbook example of why chess is a difficult game. Bishop up, knight up, bloody awesome. Like, all I can say is total legendario. You can see the evaluation. Do you see the bar? No, I cut the bar of 2, which makes me actually happy that I did. At the moment, we are +3, so we are piece up for all intents and purposes as far as the engine's evaluation is concerned. Bishop e7, knight h5. When I first saw this game and I went through with student, I'm like, oh, baby, queen f6 incoming, eh? And he goes like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, my God. And we lose this game. No, can't happen, man. Better still, after queen f6, which is just absolutely a joy to watch, knight e8, no, whackers, let me take that one too, baby. So good, so good. Takes, check, rook takes, knight takes even, knight takes d7, of course, forking and kniving and spooning all these guys. Bishop back, take, and ta-da, here we go. We have got the one game, the one that we won already. We took the exchange. We are an exchange and a pawn up. Now, one thing which is very important to note hereabouts that you need to take on board is that there are really two ways for this game to continue, and that is going to be the stupidest sentence I've ever done in my YouTubing career, and yet you will agree with me. Either your opponent resigns here, or they don't. Got you with that one, right? But it has a meaning, because the position is hopelessly lost. So if they resign here, then you go like, yep, makes perfect sense. Exchange and a pawn down. Yeah, next game, please. Or they don't, which means that they tend to drag this out, or they want to drag it out as far as they can, and they would like to do the impossible, which is to resist. Now, as soon as you realize that this is on, which is pretty much every single time when your opponent is playing a totally dead loss position, what you need to do is to double your mental efforts to finish it off. And it sounds very crude and demanding, because obviously it took a lot of mental effort, so to speak, or your chess skills, to come up with stuff like queen f6, knight e8, then sack the queen, then fork the whole shenanigan to arrive here. And yet, the best way to approach this is that if you tell yourself that the hardest part of the game is yet to come, which is to convert this. And it's really, really easy to not to acquire this mindset, because then you tend to look at it like, yeah, I'm a pawn and an exchange up, and it's gonna win itself. And that's the first time when you drop your guard, and that's when you start playing second best moves, third best moves, suboptimal moves. Eventually the game starts to drag out. And then other factors start to creep in, like we have got less time. So now we are headed towards an awkward time trouble with a game that we maybe should have won already X amount of moves ago, and yet we are still playing, and the W is still not even in the bag. So double your mental effort. Instead of being content and happy with what you have achieved, tell yourself, not good enough. I still need to win this. And if you have that mentality, then you are instantly in the right mindset to not to settle for second best. And that means that you are more than likely going to investigate various avenues to convert it, and then you will be able to pick the one that you like the most. Let me tell you one thing first off the bat. Bishop f6, you go like, yeah, totally logical, pins this knight, why wouldn't I do that? And I would instantly challenge. g7 is the worst piece on the board by far. Bishop f6 pins that knight, but king g8 declines the, or rather denies the pin right away. We don't want to trade that bishop for knight. And here comes my second piece of advice. When you are 75,000 kilometers ahead in a game, then there are certain scenarios that you should stay away from. One of them is opposite colored bishops. Hardly comes to you as a surprise. And by trading this for this, we are now looking to have an opposite colored bishop scenario, which always makes things a touch more difficult. Now, if you look at this position with a different eye, instead of being obsessed with this pin, you would realize that knight f4 is a logical move. And if you just play as much as g3, this tiny little pawn push instantly denies two knight moves and sort of renders both knights utterly useless, because upon knight e6, apart from the fact that you can take and thus achieving same colored bishop scenarios, you can also just slide back, and the knights have nowhere to go. These squares are all yours. And so it's just a very easy conversion from here on. So bishop f6 was the first one that sort of set up on the wrong path, so to speak, because obviously student didn't want to take on g7 yet, but then you might wonder, why is the bishop on f6 any good? Problem number 2, why are we playing here rook d3? Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand the move unless we wanted to do this and this, which will take me to my third point very soon. The most natural move in my opinion here is a4. And again, this is another important thing to note. It's worth nothing to be an exchange up if there is no way to deploy the rooks. Rooks need open files. It's a stupid cliche that you learn when you are 1100. But as you can see, 2100, and we still need to discuss the fact that rooks need open files so that we can penetrate and trade rooks. Because the d file, the only one that is open, is currently blocked off with this bishop, which looks terrible, but it fulfills amazing defensive duties. Rook d3 is a bit of a mystery move in light of the fact that we did not do this, although we should have. Knight h5, bishop slides back, knight f4. Actually, let me think here for a second. Oh yeah, can we take this right here? Or was it here? Oh, I think it was here. Take rook here. Take rook here. Knight e8 is still playable, but here pawn up 2 bishops is looking more than handsome. But okay, let's move on. So bishop g5 slides back, fine, knight f4, and now baby, check this out. Takes lesson. Always be ready to transition your material advantage of some sort, in this case exchange pawn up, to a different type of advantage. A lot of people are very, very scared of this concept because they only look at the loss and they don't look at the gain. So when I say transfer a certain type of advantage to a different type, it very often means it's more commonly used, at least the way in my practices at least, when, for example, you trade off your opponent's bad bishop, which is obviously a strategic loss, in order to then exploit a weak king, which is a strategic gain. And so you transfer, or rather you transpose one, or you transition from one advantage to the other. So many transfers out there. Yeah, do not be afraid to transition from one type of material advantage, in this case, to another type of, in this case, material advantage. Because going from an exchange and a pawn up, we are now going to go to 2 pawns up, which again, if you are just looking at chess materialistically, which you should never do, by the way, which is why 90% of people do that all the time, it's a loss. But the reality is that now you are going to be having a rook on the only open file. Your 2 bishops are absolutely ripping and shredding the board apart, and we still have 2 extra pawns. This should be winnable with level material, purely based on 2 bishops versus 2 knights. No worries. And on top of that, we have 2 pawns. So this was a very, very awesome way to use the rooks, because right now they are useless. We have an extra rook on the board and it does nothing at all. And you never feel comfortable with such scenarios. Like here, if you are scared of doing this, which you shouldn't be, but like I said, most people are, compare your potential to play for a win from this position versus this. What are we playing here for? And people are obsessed with this idea of hanging on to their material, which they can then not use at all. Like, awesome, we have the 2 rocks. To what end? They're useless. Anyway, moving on. King g7, nothing has been ruined. King h2, not really an optimal move. Looks like we want to play for g3. Extremely naive is a good way to describe this move, thinking that we will have time for g3, which we want, because opponent is going to do one of these and then we will have to trade. Again, rook d1 looked like an excellent option. Take, and take next d6. So knight f4 and bang. And again, 2 pawns, bishop over knight. That's another type of advantage. Superior rook over the other rook. Easy win. Again, do not be afraid to give a little bit back to gain a little bit more, which means that we are not giving anything back. So king h2, that was the first massive slip, because here we are just completely oblivious to what's to come. And unfortunately, after the trade, now the situation is changing not to our favor, because now this knight has a fabulous e5 square, and these 3 black pawns very efficiently and effectively blockade 4 of our pawns here. And still there is no way to see how our rooks could be used for a major breakthrough. We play f3. I really dislike this move. Very, very, very much I dislike this. And this actually takes us back to our previous video about defensive mindset. What's the point of f3, I would ask? And many of you would say to stop f3 check, to which I would be like, why on earth would I want to stop this? So for argument's sake, I go a4, you go check, I go g3. Now I have got control over the f4 square, which I didn't before, and I'm constantly threatening to mop up this pawn. So this doesn't seem to be such a terrifying scenario that I would want to stop it. In fact, I was looking at playing g3 at various points in this endgame for white to actually try to undermine this dark square domination. I have got no pieces as white to control any of these squares. And that just feels like it sucks, man. You want some dark square controls. And so at least I use my pawn to actually do that. Admittedly, it would isolate this, but that also means that now the f file is open. I should rather draw the arrow upwards, and we are good to go. Anyway, we go f3. Really dislike that. Rook d5. Not sure why we are going there, because again, sacking is way too late to the party. Black can just clog it up. So that was essentially a waste of a move instead of doing a4 right away. Or still come here and hint this. So that's another total waste of a move. a4 is good. So now we are opening up the b file. Rooks get traded. And now we go, and this is where, as a coach, I'm always in trouble. Like, I would say, why did we play a4? To open the a file. Okay. Why did you say we always played a4? To open the a file. Okay. What did we do? Rook d1. Every single time I come across this, you would not believe how frequent this kind of, I don't even know what to call it, like a massive mental stumble I come across. Like literally every coaching session there is one. You played a4 to play rook a1. That's right. So rook d1. What? Why? How? When? Like rook a1 and penetrate. The reason why it's difficult to play a move like rook a1 here is because a lot of people would say and think, I can't attack anything. To which, and this is again a very typical chess wisdom that you are inevitably going to acquire in the long run, is that it doesn't matter. It stands good here, it stands awful here. You definitely will penetrate, and you definitely will be able to pick on targets in the long run, or at least, the very least you will accomplish is that you are going to tie down your opponent's pieces so badly that that will then allow you to regroup the rest of your army and penetrate somewhere else on the board. You can't possibly argue against a move like rook a1, not with chess arguments. It's impossible. Now, if something is so irrefutably strong that no chess arguments can be brought up against, why would you not play that? Right? So, yeah, that was just a no-brainer of a move. Actually, now that I'm looking at the board, I think the reason we didn't do this is because we were scared of this. Which, by the way, goes to show again that piece activity is what we live by all the time. Because after trading pawns, now my rook is supremely active, and defending the pawn is impossible due to this. Anyway, rook d1, king back, king back. We bring the king across so that knight d3 is no longer a threat. Whatever, we're totally winning. Rook in. Although what that allowed was that now black just has time to actually stop the efficiency, so to speak, of the penetration. And now we are still playing the same game with an exchange and a pawn up. We have played 20 moves and still struggle down, man. And from here on, it's not easy. What I kept on saying to my student when we analyzed it together is that you cannot ever have a fixed mindset, which again is a lot of people guilty of, and look upon this as a fixed structure that we can't help. It's fixed, so I will have to play elsewhere. It's not. It totally is not fixed. You should constantly be on the lookout to play g3 takes and f4. And a lot of people would not even look at this move at all in the entirety of the game, because they would look at it once, conclude that it's hanging, Can't do that. The whole structure is fixed. Bugger it. I will look elsewhere. You can't do that. The chessboard is not so large that you can just go like certain parts. Just, yeah, that has been fixed. No worries. We will go elsewhere. No. You constantly, every move, have to revisit if this is possible. Because if this move is possible, it needs to win. There's just no other way to talk about this, because I'm going to win this pawn, and these two are now rolling up very mobile. And actually, this is a winning continuation here. So never ever take something that looks fixed for granted, because that's a static feature. But static features are always beaten by tactical features. Tactics always beats everything. And tuck, 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 and there we go. G2, we go here, check, we go, go, go. And yes, we may have lost the pawn, but now the position has opened up. The king is finally activated, and the knight is feeling a little bit sketchy. In fact, I can afford losing this, but I don't have to, because f7 was hanging too. I can just come here and keep rolling up. Yes, pawns are dropping, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that finally White's pieces are active like mad. It's just absolutely insane how powerful the white pieces have become. If you are playing this game without this bishop and king, which is what happened in 90% of this endgame, no way can you win this. Okay. Long story short, lots of toing and froing, and here again there will come a moment when Dada G3 again wins like a champ. You take, and I go Rook G1. Now here it requires very careful considerations, because F4, Bishop C5 is a beautiful tactical counterpunch after which the pawn can roll in. So we have to respect that. But again, I didn't say be careless. I said consider things that are there but look impossible. And then just look here. And now if the bishop goes there, F4, king here on your bike. Easy win. And again, note how the pieces come alive. I would give a lot more than a pawn for that. And here we go into another terrible toing and froing. And the interim, now we are less than a minute. So from here on, what happens is almost irrelevant. I will show you, but it's not rational to expect now to easily convert the game. So we do this, lots of toing and froing, and again, a very awkward blockade on those dark squares. Very nasty stuff. King F1 here, and finally student went like, okay, I can't stand this anymore. I need to activate the rook and penetrate. But now, all of a sudden, these queenside pawns started hurting. And although the position is still technically winning, we are beside the point when it was a basic kindergarten win. And therefore, I'm going to cut the chat now. We went on to, lose pretty much all the important pawns. The blockade remained on this too, by the way, since move 20. Now we are on 75. And eventually we ended up hanging a piece somewhere. Yeah. And we lost. An absolutely heartbreaking defeat that was so easily avoidable. I mean, if you go back now, it was so long ago that we nearly forgot that once upon a time we had this. Right? So if you put this in contrast with what we had in the end, you go like, oh man, that stings. That sucks. Like, I don't want to be the guy who plays that game. I would have broken a keyboard or two over this for sure. I mean, yeah. So how do we avoid this? Once again, let's do a bit of a summary of the things that I listed for you. So first and foremost, put your mental energy into converting. That is going to help you to avoid really half-hearted moves that are like, it will do. No, it won't. Play the best moves. 2, be ready to transition from one advantage to another. Because if the position becomes too static and it feels like it's just stale, then your material advantage is going to become less and less relevant. Keep it dynamic. Your piece activity is far more important than a pawn or two or an exchange. And 3, stick to logical plans. Like if you do a4 to open up that a file, then for goodness sake, occupy the file. That's why you did it. And 4, static structures that are still changeable should never be looked upon as a fixed feature. So we had this so long in this game that we didn't even consider at all in the entirety of the game the possibility of a g3 break, which was doable on like 5 different occasions in this game and would have been a spectacular way to force a beautiful win here by breaking out with the pawns. So that is a lot of information, and although this video is going to be titled as how to win the one game, I probably should have fixed it or reconsidered, just focused on the endgame bits. But nonetheless, I think it stands. So I hope that this was an enjoyable one for you guys, and I will be back with more soon. Thank you. Bye.